Bonjour everyone, my name is Jante and welcome to episode 4 of Coffee and Film. During the dark and cold winter months, there's only one thing to do to survive these freezing temperatures, and that is escape. While some people are able to follow the sun and literally leave the cold behind, I'm not as fortunate, so I do what I've always done: escape into films. This time around, my mood got affected so greatly. The only thing that could fix this winter depression were happy and uplifting musicals. And it brought me back to last summer during our annual heat wave, when my only solace against the heat was shielding my windows so not a single ray of sunshine could get inside, retreating into my comfy bed with my trusty old fan cranked up to its highest setting. I am someone who doesn't enjoy extreme temperatures, not cold, not hot, and on this day during the hottest week of the summer, I was in dire need of an airy and refreshing film, and I stumbled upon one of the many classics I hadn't sunk my teeth into yet, the 1952 musical Singin' in the Rain. Watching Gene Kelly prance around the rain made me literally cool down. It was a glorious feeling, and yes, I was happy again. If the rain wasn't gonna come to me in a literal sense, then I would live vicariously through the characters dancing and prancing in it. So whether it's the middle of winter or the middle of summer, grab yourself a damn fine cup of coffee as I tell you all about how one particular character in one of the greatest musicals on the planet tap danced their way right into my heart.
Short people have long faces, and long people have short faces. Big people have little humor, and little people have no humor at all.
Yes, I am guilty. I clickbaited you by name dropping Gene Kelly. This episode, however, is about his Singin' in the Rain co-star, Donald O'Connor. With a career spanning over 60 years and a filmography with more than 50 titles, Mr. Donald O'Connor was a natural-born performer. He loved to entertain audiences with his tap dancing and singing, and made generations laugh with his comedic routines. Of course, he's most known for his role as Cosmo Brown in Singin' in the Rain, even having won a Golden Globe for Best Actor in a musical or comedy film. Which is where my love for Donald O'Connor started. It's where I saw him perform for the first time alongside Hollywood leading man Gene Kelly, portraying the silent film actor Dawn Lockwood, accompanied by Debbie Reynolds in her breakout role as chorus girl Kathy Selden. Whoever put these three together knew what they were doing. They complement each other tremendously while also showing their own unique set of skills, making you fall in love with every joke, every note, and every tap. The story of Singin' in the Rain is a very interesting one. It takes place in 1927, an era in Hollywood where silent films are slowly making their transition into the first talkies, films wherein the actors would, talk. It's a very meta and satirical take on the matter. The writers of Singin' in the Rain have lived through that change, and their careers have suffered from it too. Many silent actors at the time actually lost their career because their voices didn't match their screen personas. So therein they found a way to incorporate previously written songs into a story that was relevant to them and to the time. As mentioned before, our leading man Gene Kelly portrays Don Lockwood, a famous silent film actor. During the opening scene, Mr. Lockwood invites us to join him in a flashback where he chronicles his rise to stardom, while he and his co-star, the ditzy diva Lena Lamont, get interviewed on the red carpet during the premiere of their newest feature film. It's obvious that the audience was made to fall in love with Gene Kelly's character. He's tan, he has perfect white teeth, he's this manly hunk of a man. He's the type of man that was on every billboard during the golden age of Hollywood. Aside from starring in the lead, Gene Kelly also choreographed most musical numbers and co-directed alongside Stanley Donen. Now, Mr. Lockwood, he's a bit of a serious actor at this point. He has left his humble roots as a hoofer behind to shine in these grandiose romance movies alongside his on-screen paramour Lena Lamont. Note how I said on-screen, even though they are only colleagues, their studio is pushing the story that Dawn and Lena are romantically involved, much to Dawn's dismay. The man just can't stand her. Lena, on the other hand, is convinced that they are truly in love, and I love me a delusional woman. But the delusion is the least of Lena's problems. Alongside this publicity stunt, Lena suffers from annoying voice syndrome. Sprinkle a little bit of jealousy on top, and you have a wonderful recipe for a villainous girl boss. Not only is Lena unaware of Dawn's disinterest, she also has no idea she isn't really that great of an actress when she opens her mouth. Of course, it's all played to be over the top and funny, and Lena kind of gets put into this villain role. She's the butt of the joke half of the time, but you also can help but feel sympathetic towards her. The actress Jean Hagen did a superb job in this portrayal, and we love and support her in this house. But we can't lose focus, people, because the second Donald O'Connor stepped out of that car and onto that red carpet, I had eyes for no one else for the following 103 minutes. My pupils became the shape of hearts for the next 2 hours, okay? To this day, I have not seen any other film Gene Kelly was in. How many Donald O'Connor films have I seen? Wait, and you'll find out. And no worries, I am nothing if not thorough, and I will get into some of his other films later, but every story of love and adoration starts somewhere. And mine did the moment Don Lockwood yelled for his friend to call him a cab after getting swarmed by fans, only for his friend to reply, "Okay, you're a cab." It was how the romantics say love at first sight. We get to see Cosmo in action for the first time during the aforementioned flashback. He gets introduced to us as Dawn's childhood friend and fellow entertainer, and see them perform a scala of different vaudevillian acts together. They are the tap dancing, fiddle and piano playing duet singing duo your grandma dreamed of every single night, okay? Present day, Cosmo works as a studio musician. He's shown as the mood pianist for Dawn, which I found out was an actual job people had during the silent film era. And throughout the movie, he sort of serves as Dawn's own jack of all trades. He's trying to both keep his career on track with this new movie and help him get close to Kathy, the girl he actually likes. Cosmo's support and companionship are unmatched. We all need a Cosmo Brown in our lives, and if we don't have one, maybe that means we are the Cosmo Brown. Yeah, it took me this long to make a queer allegory. I too am surprised. I don't know if this is a popular or unpopular opinion, but Cosmo Brown? Queer coded. And no, I will not elaborate any further at this point. When the cookie crumbles, it crumbles. And when the wrist limps, it limps. The character of Cosmo Brown brings a lot of nuance into the film. The story of Singing in the Rain is one that is meant to poke fun at classic Hollywood tropes, and Cosmo is indispensable in doing so. Because unlike his bestie Dawn, he isn't famous and leads a life behind the scenes. This is proven during that opening scene on the red carpet, because even though I was cheering very loudly when he got out of that car, I was the only one. So he isn't afraid to call out and make jokes about these Hollywood stereotypes. His sardonic remarks really show how he too was underrated. His comedic quips also remind me of a reading challenge on Drag Race. If Cosmo Brown was a drag queen and a contestant, he would definitely win the reading challenge. The amount of shade he has thrown upon Lena Lamont is hilarious. And if you've seen the film, you know how Cosmo kind of literally invented lip syncing, proving he would also be the lip sync assassin of the season. Plus, the looks he serves in the entire film. Can I get an amen? That aside, Donald O'Connor in the role of Cosmo Brown totally steals the show for me, while simultaneously being the most underrated of the three main cast members. Take, for instance, the amount of screen time he has. Donald has less than half the amount of screen time that Gene Kelly had, and yet he won the Golden Globe for Best Actor, not Best Supporting Actor. The reason why is because he really cemented himself as a three-dimensional character, having foundational relationships with the characters and serving more purpose than solely providing comic relief. Generally speaking, at this point of Donald's career, he has been in show business for over 20 years. He can sing, he can act, but man, can he move those feet. I've said it once and I'll say it again. That man has tap danced his way right into my heart, and he better get comfortable because he ain't leaving anytime soon. However, we have to address the elephant, or shall I say clown, in the room. His most famous number in Singing in the Rain, the iconic Make 'em Laugh. The first time you watch it, you don't really laugh because you are actually in a state of utter shock, seeing all of the insane body movement unfold before your very eyes. Donald took the reins with this one and choreographed it himself, grabbing inspiration from fellow dancers and comedians like Fred Astaire and Jerry Howard, while also honing in on his roots as the youngest son of a circus family. And you are in for a treat with this one. It's laden with improvisations and backflips and crazy gags. It's probably my favorite of all the performances. Honestly, just all the numbers that include him, I could watch over and over and not grow tired of it. They will never fail to fill me with a sense of childlike joy. Donald initially spent much of his early career as a hoofer. A hoofer is a tap dancer of the highest level. They are masters of improvisation as well. This resulted in him mostly dancing from the waist down. He received no formal training in tap dance until he went to work for Universal Pictures in 1941 and took classes with the studio's choreographer, who, after only a few weeks, pronounced Donald unteachable. So he basically had to develop his own style. He had a hard time picking up on steps, which is insane to me if you look at how he evolved as a dancer in such a short amount of time and at such a young age as well. You can really see the evolution of his dancing throughout all of his pictures. Even the usage of his arms changes noticeably. During the 40s, when his film career began to take off, he was mostly in the background until he got paired with Peggy Ryan in the 1942 musical Mr. Big, where he could really showcase all of his talents, but we'll get more into that era later. Donald was also known for never being able to do anything the same way twice. He was a natural at improvisation. For example, during the Make 'em Laugh number, he uses a dummy. And he found that thing on a stage next door and just started fooling around with it. And it left the cast and crew roaring with laughter, so they decided to incorporate it into the film. Make 'em Laugh was such an impressive number that finding a proper ending for it became a big problem. Donald said that he felt it was leading to such a crescendo that I thought I'd have to commit suicide as a finale. But running up a wall and proceeding to do a backflip did the trick. A trick he had already done in 2 previous films. From start to finish, he makes you laugh, but he also makes you fall in love with his boyish charm, his dashing blue eyes, and his knack at physical comedy. Generally speaking, the way he carries himself at times is so delicate and dainty, and at other times he will play the silly factor up a notch, falling and flailing all over the place. The versatility this man held in his body was matched by no one at the time. Donald was always aware of how his entire body would read on screen. It doesn't come as a surprise that the Make Him Laugh number really took a physical toll on Donald. That man was running up walls, doing somersaults, wrestling a dummy on a concrete floor, while also smoking 4 packs of cigarettes a day. Every inch of his body is precisely calibrated to be the funniest it can possibly be. And because the performance was so taxing, he ended up in the hospital for a week, suffering from exhaustion and painful carpet burns. And after all that, he got the bad news that no one checked the aperture of the camera and they fogged out all the film, so he had to do it all over again. Donald really put his entire heart and soul into that number, and there's a story about how he constructed the number by making Gene Kelly write down every new idea or trick. He even invited one of his brothers over to help him rehearse the stunts with a rope. And if that doesn't sound insane enough to you, Donald himself doesn't even see this as his best work. That title goes to the dance number he shares with Vera Allen in the film Call Me Madam, which came out 1 year prior. Another fan favorite is the Moses Supposes number, another duet with Gene Kelly. The dancing in Moses is one of the most virile, difficult tap routines on film. The precision of the steps is insanely calculated. Donald and Gene are totally in sync while still showing their idiosyncrasies brought upon by their different backgrounds, and it's absolutely wonderful. Now, as you know, I am a nice and wholesome person, and I like to keep it positive around here, so I don't want to minimize the performance of any of the other cast members because I am putting the focus on only one of them in this episode. So, first of all, Gene Kelly did a superb job choreographing the hell out of this film. Even though a lot of the stories about the production paint him in a negative light, I want to remind everyone of one of the many positive sides as well. Donald recalled how he and Gene found common ground at the beginning of production, saying, "As I was driving home that first day, I thought, oh my god, which way does he turn? I only turned to the left." The next day, I was just about to ask him which way he turned, and he asked me. He said, "Which way do you turn?" And I said, "To the left." And he said, "Thank God. So do I." Also, the way Gene Kelly looks at Debbie Reynolds, full of adoration, during the All I Do Is Dream of You number, is spot on because that was exactly my face looking at her the entire time she was on screen. At the mere age of 19, Debbie Reynolds impressed everyone when she proved herself as an untrained dancer alongside two of the greatest dancers of Hollywood at the time. The trio only had a limited time to prepare for the film, but Debbie picked up on everything and managed to keep up with her male companions. During one of the most impressive dance numbers I have ever seen in a movie, Debbie Reynolds had to do take after take until her feet were literally bleeding. I believe the last shot of the Good Morning performance took about 40 takes to shoot, and even after all of that, she still couldn't really badmouth Gene Kelly after the suffering he put her through. She was one hell of a woman. And with Singin' in the Rain, you really get this lovely package deal of three amazing performers with their own unique talents. Cosmo just happened to be my favorite of the bunch. He really is the man for the job. And I mean every job. Are you heartbroken because you're smitten with a girl but can't seem to find her anywhere? He will cheer you up. He will make you laugh. Do you feel like your career is deteriorating because another studio has made a successful talkie before you could? Don't worry. Cosmo and your gal pal will stay up all night with you, trying to come up with a solution for your problems, and then still have enough energy to sing and dance and say good morning to you while your female co star's feet are bleeding out because you made her practice this number over and over. But the three of you look perfect together, so it was totally worth it, in a way. I guess what I'm saying is that Donald O'Connor was the ITGIRL. He's the Hollywood it girl you are so desperately looking for. And he has been here all the time. You just haven't looked hard enough. And it's sad that you even had to look this far in the first place, only proving the fact that he is one of the most underrated old Hollywood performers of all time. There are a lot of hidden gems within his filmography that deserve some attention, and by God, if no one does it, I will.
Oh, girl, am I embarrassed.
What's the matter?
What's the matter? My slip is showing.
At the time of Singing in the Rain, Donald O'Connor was already an established actor, maybe even surpassing Gene Kelly in terms of fame, but I don't like to compare. Instead, I would like to take it down a notch and go on a walk down memory lane. Let us go back in time to 1925. This year marks what is believed to be the birth year of our man of the hour. He was the youngest of 7 children, born into a vaudeville family, and spent most of his childhood on the road with his parents and siblings. And because they spent so much time on the road, Donald's mother doesn't remember exactly where or when he was born, but the official date is given as August 28, 1925. Now, because I am bad with definitions, I will explain what vaudeville is by paraphrasing my trusty old pal Wikipedia once more. Vaudeville is a theatrical genre of variety entertainment which began in France at the end of the 19th century. A vaudeville performance is typically made up of a series of separate, unrelated acts grouped together on a common bill. These acts can include classical musicians, singers, dancers, comedians, trained animals, magicians, ventriloquists, acrobats, clowns, jugglers, and so forth. And it was one of the most popular types of entertainment in North America for several decades. He was about 13 months old when he first started dancing by being held up by his collar or something. However, that sadly isn't the most memorable thing from his childhood. When he was just 2 years old, Donald and his older sister Arlene were hit by a car while crossing the street outside a theater. Donald survived, but his sister passed away. She was only 6 years old at the time. Only a few weeks later, his father also passed from a heart attack while performing, resulting in his mother becoming overprotective over her youngest son. The sentence, "the show must go on," became very literal for this family. It wasn't until Donald was 11 years old that he would make his film debut in 1937 with the film Melody for Two, appearing alongside his family act. He went on to make 11 films from 1938 to 39, usually playing an orphan or the younger version of the film's lead. His film career got put on hold for a bit when his older brother Billy passed away, forcing him to return instead to the family vaudeville show. His breakthrough came a year or so later when he signed his first contract at Paramount Studios, during which the production quality of his early movies increased. He later made the switch to Universal in 1941, where he spent most of his acting career. He made a bunch of well-received films that same year, mostly taking on the boy next door persona, earning him the title of teen idol. Donald and his co-stars, who often included Peggy Ryan or Gloria Jean, were quick to rise to stardom, working together in a handful of films where the plot wasn't that important, the budget wasn't big, but the fun surely was. When Donald turned 18, he got drafted into the army, where he first joined the Air Corps, later making the change to the Special Services, where he was given the suitable job for entertaining his fellow soldiers up until his return in 1946. Before entering the service, Donald and his first wife, Gwen, eloped in fear of him not making it back. So not only can he sing, dance, and act and all that jazz, this man learned how to fly a plane and was married by the age of 18 and a father by the age of 22. I'm 22, unemployed, and watch an average of 25 movies a month. Times have clearly changed for the better. And he starred in a lot of films in the 40s, making, I believe, 14 pictures in the span of 3 years or something along those lines. This way, it was possible for the studio to sporadically release these films, making it seem like Donald never left, which is kind of messed up if you think about it. Different sources mention different details, but the facts are right there. There is a long list of films to see with an adolescent Donnie, and I watched all of them, which is messed up in an entirely different way. The pictures he made in the late 1940s were lackluster according to critics, though his performances were reviewed favorably. The next peak in his career came in the 50s with the release of the Francis the Talking Mule films. Now, I have a confession to make. Horses scare the crap out of me. And the talking one, no, that is just something I can do. So I can't speak on these series, but they were a big hit. They were such a big hit that Donald dropped out of the series later on because the mule got more fan mail than him. The disrespect, honey. His greatest films, however, were made when Universal lent him out to other studios, with Singin' in the Rain being released in 1952, Call Me Madam in 1953, and There's No Business Like Show Business in 1954. These films allowed Donald to showcase all of his talents simultaneously, and they're just delicious to watch. Aside from the silver screen, Donald was also a familiar face on the television screen, hosting the NBC variety series The Colgate Comedy Hour, winning an Emmy Award in 53. He also got his own show from 54 to 55 and hosted the first internationally televised Academy Awards in 54. 2 years later, in 56, he even conducted the Los Angeles Philharmonic Orchestra in a symphony he wrote. And the Brussels Symphony Orchestra recorded some of his work as well. I didn't even know we had an orchestra. But yeah, he was involved. In the late 50s, his focus moved to touring and doing live shows. We do love a versatile king in this house. But that doesn't mean he never returned to the silver screen. He did so in 1961 with the films Cry for Happy and The Wonders of Aladdin. This dude even had a nightclub act in Vegas. His last main role in a movie was in 1965 with That Funny Feeling, and the decades following that were calmer career-wise, with Donald appearing in a few films here and there. He had a bit of a rough patch after his divorce, I believe, and suffered from a heart attack later on in 1971. He was hospitalized subsequently for 3 months after collapsing in 1978. And he wrote letters to his friends and family explaining that his life had completely changed. He was paralyzed from the waist down, but luckily recovered by way of physical therapy. The letters detailed the lives of other patients, particularly a 30-year-old man who was completely immobilized. I won't take anything I have for granted, again, was written in each letter. But that is as detailed as I'm going to get when it comes to his personal life. You guys know me by now. I like to keep the focus on the art. Of course, it's important to not completely separate the art from the artist, if that's even possible in the first place. Either way, when we do get personal, it's mostly about how the art affects my personal life, and not the other way around. However, I do think it's important and admirable to mention how open Donald O'Connor was about the hardships he has faced in his life. What he wrote in his letters was true. He never took anything for granted ever again and didn't give up on doing what he loved, entertaining people and making them laugh. In later years, he returned to the stage, returning to his nightclub act in the 70s and appearing on Broadway in the 80s. He has a few other film credits here and there after that. By the end of his life in 2003, he was awarded 2 stars on the Hollywood Walk of Fame, 1 for motion pictures and 1 for television. When he received the first one, he commented on it by saying, "Cement is better than the sands of time. Make him laugh, make him cry. What more is there?" Donald is survived by his second wife, Gloria, who he married in 1956. Their 4 children and grandchildren, respectively. I read somewhere that one of his daughters said that even when he was in pain, He still wanted to make people laugh. Only 2 nights before he passed away due to heart failure at the age of 78, he told his family, "I just like to thank the Academy for my Lifetime Achievement Award that I will eventually get." Donald O'Connor is remembered for many things. It's hard to define him in just a few words. At his core, he was an entertainer. So before we move on to our next segment, I want to leave you with the following quote. "I was born and raised to entertain other people. I've heard laughter and applause and known a lot of sorrow. Everything about me is based on show business. I think it will bring me happiness. I hope so."
Judy, you know how I feel. I'd do anything for you. I'd rob a bank. I'd take a rocket to the moon. Anything. Just ask me.
Put me on the cover. My picture on the cover of the magazine.
Judy, I said I'd kill myself and take a rocket to the moon, but don't ask the impossible.
It's safe to say that after a run of 30 Donald O'Connor movies in the span of 1.5 weeks, I had a lovely time. I'm very unfamiliar with old Hollywood at this moment in my cinephile career, so this has provided me with small insight into the topic. It was also very comforting to watch a bunch of films where the most physical contact you get is maybe a single smooch and the love interests dancing cheek to cheek. It's very pure and wholesome. And because these characters have to hold back and be minimal, it's all about the silent yearning. But most of all, it's about the dancing and the comedy, which Donald O'Connor excels at. The love for his craft is present in all of his works. And believe me, there are a lot of them. I still haven't gotten through them all, but with every film I watch, my excitement only grows and grows. So instead of going into all of these films one by one, I'm only going to mention my favorites from the 40s and the 50s because these are the eras I'm the most familiar with. I'm also only going to mention the ones in which he has the lead role or an important one at least. Side note, his character in That Funny Feeling deserved better, but it came out during the 60s, so that's all the time we're gonna spend on him for now. And as I have mentioned before, the 40s are like the buffet for Donald O'Connor fans. There's around 18 films according to my calculations, so honey, breakfast, lunch, and dinner has been served. Going through his filmography was especially fun during this era because it showcases his tremendous growth as a dancer, actor, and singer. Alongside that, you also just see him grow up from teen to dashing young man in the span of a handful of films. Most of these were very silly, and the plot was very simple, so they were perfectly light and airy to get through, especially if you're like me and plan to watch them all in the span of a few days. Don't ask me how, it's an art. Donald in general is very funny. There's no man who can fall over like he does, let's be real. But Donald in the 40s definitely shines in the comedy department because of his boyish charm and one liners he kept dropping from left to right. He's just very in tune with his body, and the wonder of it all is that it's always been there because of his unconventional upbringing. It's hard to put into words because you just have to witness it with your own eyes. The only thing I wish I was able to see were those lovely blue eyes, but every film from the 40s was black and white, so sadly, no luck in that department. With 18 titles added to his filmography, business was a boomin', so it's impossible to mention them all. A few of my favorites, though, are the following. Number one, When Johnny Comes Marching Home, released in 1942. I thought the plot was engaging. The pairing of Donald together with Peggy Ryan and Gloria Jean is just superb. Their performances are definitely the highlights. My favorite musical number is called One of Us Has Got to Go, and it is so catchy and funny. And I've been watching it on a loop way too many times for it to be healthy at this point, but they were stunning. Number two, Chip of the Old Block, released in 44. In one word, endearing. It was very wholesome and it had some of my favorite Donald and Peggy performances. The studio knew what they were doing, pairing these kids together in so many films. Number 3 on my list is titled Are You With It? Released in 48. Don't ask me about the plot. All I remember is that it takes place at a carnival, but the dancing was so good it deserved a mention. Number 4, Feudin', Fussin', and a Fightin', also released in 48. The plot was absolutely absurd. It involves kidnapping and running and a horse. It involves Donald's performing his version of Me and My Shadow, and it's one of his most impressive solo performances to date. It includes the famous running up the wall trick he previously did in Double Crossbones and repeats later in Singing in the Rain, so I loved it. A name you've probably heard me mention a few times at this point is the one of a little lady called Peggy Ryan. She and Donald made a lot of flicks together in this decade, and she is an absolute powerhouse. Peggy Ryan also came from an entertainer's family. Her parents were professional dancers. So, unlike Donald, who found his roots in circus acts, she got dance lessons from a very young age. Peggy initially didn't want to dance with Donald because of this. They got paired up together after they auditioned for the dance troupe called the Jive Jack and Jills, and they later got put together in a bunch of films. At first, they were mostly in the background, but because of their chemistry and because the dancing was just so great, they became a beloved duo, and it shows in the amount of films they starred in together. Even if I didn't like the film for whatever reason, I still enjoyed their performances. I just love her, and she is definitely my favorite of all his recurring co stars in this era. My favorite one from this decade, however, is Something in the Wind, released in 1947. It was Donald's first film after he got home from the army, and honestly, what a comeback. He still has this boyish goofiness to him from when he was younger, but he's also absolutely charming. It's the first time seeing him as a full fledged adult, but he still has this childlike wonder to him. It's especially showing in his mannerisms and physical comedy. There's a famous number he performs in Something in the Wind called I Love a Mystery, which is quintessential Donald O'Connor viewing, in my opinion. And the film in itself is underrated for sure. Plus, his outfits were giving me so much gender envy in this one. And on top of that, it's also one of the few films of his that is available in HD. So it's definitely getting a rewatch soon. Moving on to the 50s. The 50s are like a treasure trove in Donald's career. The 50s were filled with all of these precious little gems. And once again, although the Francis series was a major success, I do not like horses. However, I do like pirates. So the 1951 film Double Crossbones is the first one of this era I'm gonna recommend. Although it didn't have great reviews, and Donald even said he thought this film was terrible, I still enjoyed it. The costumes are great, as was the single dance number, and he makes one adorable pirate. Apparently, Donald suffered from a cracked rib, courtesy of his co star Hope Emerson, so this one deserves an honorable mention at the least. 1 year before that, The Milkman came out, which also had a bunch of fun musical numbers, many more than Double Crossbones, and I must say, this is Donald at his silliest. Things just never go his way up until the end, and it is so endearing. Then, after Singing in the Rain, another gem came out. It's a short flick called I Love Melvin. It definitely got more recognition than the other ones on my list so far because it also stars Debbie Reynolds. The plot, like most of these, is also pretty simple. Donald plays the titular character Melvin. He's a photographer for a famous magazine, and Debbie plays Judy Leroy, an aspiring actress who dreams of Hollywood fame, and she sees Melvin as her way there because he falsely promises her to get her on the cover of the magazine. He's kind of a red flag, but we love him. It's in the title. You're not allowed to hate him because then I Love Melvin is not the movie for you. But once again, there's a bunch of fun tap dancing numbers in this, especially the one of them together in the living room. I would call it the highlight of the film if this one didn't also include Donald tap dancing and freaking roller skates. This man really is full of surprises. Around the same time, the film Call Me Madam was released. This is 52, I believe, or 53? 52 or 53. Either way, it was kind of long. I wasn't very invested in the plot, but it was worth watching solely based on the music and the relationships between the characters, the chemistry. It's there, all right. And the dance numbers were just spectacular. Especially Donald's duet with Ethel Merman keeps sticking in my head, and there's not even dancing in there. They're just singing together, and it's absolutely wonderful. His character, he's lovesick, and she just tries to cheer him up, and it's very, very sweet. And once again, he looks like a dreamboat with the suit and the glasses. I see you, sir. I see you. Call Me Madam really allowed Donald to show what a great singer he was, as well as a dancer, which is why I just it's been in my head for this long. He's just as entertaining sitting down and serenading someone as he is dancing by himself or with a partner. The following year, There's No Business Like Show Business was released, the forgotten musical, starring Ethel Merman once again, Mitzi Gaynor, and the one and only Marilyn Monroe. The music in this is so good, and Marilyn Monroe absolutely devoured everyone else in this film. Her performances were so shocking at the time because it was too racy for people, resulting in it being kind of a flop in the box office, if you can believe. She was honestly too powerful for her time, as was this movie. I, on the other hand, was mesmerized from start to finish. I could spend an hour just breaking down the immaculate set designs and the costumes. It was just so impressive and went along perfectly with the musical numbers. And if that wasn't enough to win me over, there's a dash of drama sprinkled into the plot that actually left me gagging. And if you're not gonna watch it, at least take a look at the number titled A Man Chases a Girl Until She Catches Him. You will not regret it. 2 years later, we're in 1956 now, Donald and Bing Crosby reunited in Anything Goes. They actually start together in one of Donald's earliest films, released in 1939, by the title Sing You Sinners. And I love the musical numbers in that one, but the plot wasn't that interesting, so I won't go into it at this moment. Anything Goes, however, got me sticking to the screen from start to finish. The plot was overly dramatic, but in such a fun way. It's just straight up shenanigans on a boat. It has two beautiful leading ladies, and Donald is in a smooth operator era. Up until now, his characters had a certain whimsy about them. There was always this clumsy energy to them. The love interest portrayed by Mitzi Gaynor falls head over heels immediately. And I can relate, sister. This one made me cry as well. But unlike There's No Business Like Show Business, it was from pure joy. If I had to make a ranking of my favorite O'Connor flicks, you would be asking me the impossible, clearly, but I hope you took notes during the segment because it provides you with somewhat of a list to start off on. What I can say is that out of all of them, Singing in the Rain would definitely be Number one, if it weren't for Cosmo Brown hopping and bopping on my heartstrings, I wouldn't be here in the first place. There's just so many layers to this film. And even though Donald only plays just a small part in it, his presence and cultural impact were massive, which deserves to be applauded. And I will be watching it over and over again until I grow sick of it, which will never happen, let's be real. So, in order to bid you all a proper farewell, I want to thank you all for joining me on this brief journey. And to send you all off, I'm leaving you with another one of Mr. O'Connor's beautiful quotes. I'm the guy who danced through life. It seems that no matter what I do, if I did Macbeth, they want me to do 8 bars for T for 2 just because it pleases. It's a kind of dancing I do, jumping around and having a good time. It's happy, gay, and pleasant. Dancing is so wonderful. Once they start the music, your whole day, if it's been rotten, seems to melt away. You get carried away in the tune that you're moving to. It's a marvelous catharsis to be able to get on top and tap dance.